The biggest question I am seeing right now is when are Pokemon cards going to crash? Though one thing that's not being asked is what would actually cause the Pokemon market to crash? Because there's a lot of chit chat right now, and I think we can all see it like, this market right now, everything's a top signal. We're at the top of the market. Pokemon cards are about to crash. And even though everyone is suggesting that, nothing is really pointing to that. One really awesome thing about having a channel, especially of this size, and I can see a lot of the comments and I have a lot of access to my analytics, and I just always see how many new people are entering. And right now, I mean, I can let you know, we have so many more newcomers entering than I've ever seen before. And the whole discussion that the Pokemon market will crash, to me, is a bit of a logical fallacy, because you really, really need to think about this. Because if you have more people entering and there's not enough product to cater to the existing audience, and then you have a new audience coming in, how will the market crash? I mean, it's just a logical flaw. And yeah, I mean, to me, it's not making much sense. And to be honest, even even my hair right now is not making a lot of sense. But I looked at it and I was just like, man, it is getting intense. And I just need you to be honest with me, man to man or woman to man, whoever's watching on the other side of the screen. Do I look like a banana? You just need to let me know, am I looking like a bit of a banana right now? Because if I am, just tell me, because I think I need a haircut. But I'm also kind of thinking, hey, surfer vibes, beach boy, you know what I mean? So getting the vibes up. However, I do want to, in this video, discuss like the way that Pokemon cards could potentially crash. What scenarios could actually cause the market to drop? Believe it or not, there is actually a lot of ways the market could enter a downturn, but they're just probably not what you're expecting. And honestly, I don't want to just be like, it's just been expensive for so long, so obviously that's a top signal, because honestly, it doesn't mean much. What matters more is what is going to happen in the future based on the factual data, all that. Now, in terms of an actual market crash or a big kind of drop in price, the area that we need to discuss is that if a situation unfolds where supply finally catches up, though at the exact same time, demand starts fading, which leaves Pokemon cards and the whole market in a bit of a vulnerable position. Now, this is almost, me even saying this just sounds crazy, because you would have to have two things happening at the same time, working with each other, because like that situation is hard. Because one scenario could be Pokemon meets printing demand, but you still have a lot of people who love opening packs, and they kind of feel like, now it's so accessible, now I can actually open packs, now it's great. And you have a different culture where it's kind of like 2024 where everyone could open packs and it was a bit different. Now we're in a situation where no one can get packs, so as soon as packs are available, if Ascended Heroes is available, people buy it straight away. Prismatic Evolutions get restocked, bam, straight away. Any 30th anniversary that's coming up, I'm pre-ordering it straight away. Bam, bam, bam. We're entering that. This is the kind of situation that we're in currently. For this to happen and for the market to have a downturn, you would need supply to meet up, which is that's difficult in and out of itself, but then you would also need people to drop off and not be that interested. Now, also, I just want to say, if you have been enjoying the video, and especially if it's your first time on the channel, I want to say hi, welcome. My name is Phil. I love creating content around Pokemon cards, Pokemon TCG, and the market in general. If you have been enjoying the video, definitely feel free to subscribe. And I think a lot of people have actually created a bit of an identity around collectibles as well. It's part of their personalities in a way, and which is nothing bad. Okay, that's people express themselves like that. People have a big connection to it, and it's a talking point, man. When I go out and I talk, I'm like, Phil, what do you do? Like sometimes I'll tell them about the channel, sometimes I won't, just depending on the kind of person I'm speaking to, whether or not they're going to be open-minded or they're just going to see like, geez, this guy. You are a strange guy. That Phil guy, he's a bit of an odd cat. That can happen too. But what I do want to say is that people do have an identity to collectibles. So for them, especially, they've made friends from it, right? They go to card shows. They've made friends online. They're in Discords. It's hard now for everyone just to be like, oh yeah, this is just a hobby, because Pokemon collectibles are more than a hobby now. They've become something that people are so attached to, and also, especially for millennials and Gen Z, I know for me, it's a way that I would much rather invest in an IP that I have a real big soul emotional connection to, rather than just investing on numbers on a screen that I have no idea what I'm doing. And the reason why I invest in collectibles, and the reason why I love doing it, is because I understand it. So how funny is that? Because when I understand something, I'm able to make better decisions, and things happen easier for me because I understand it. And a lot of you watching right now, I know, especially like for the viewers watching at the moment, it's an easy thing, okay? So that is something to consider as well. Now also, while speaking about the Pokemon market, the Pokemon hobby always has cool new tools and new resources available, and that's why I do want to talk about today's video sponsor, Double Hollow. So Double Hollow is a Pokemon marketplace, and right now it has some incredibly competitive platform fees with only 4.9%. Now on Double Hollow, it is free to use, but you can upgrade to the premium version, and here you actually unlock some genuinely useful tools. One of them is the price forecast feature. You can actually see the price forecast, and it provides detailed insights on the cards such as the price trend and just the general market consensus. Now, one common problem that a lot of collectors face is whether or not a booster pack is worth opening. Well, the premium tool Pack Value actually assists with this. Here it shows you the expected value, or the EV, of what you can pull versus the actual price of the booster pack. Now, what's so awesome is that if you do want to try out Double Hollow's premium features, you can actually get a 30% discount off your first month by using the code on screen. All the details for Double Hollow are in the video's description. A massive shout out to them supporting the channel. Now let's get back in the video. Now, another area that I wouldn't necessarily say this is a golden ticket for a price crash, but a lot of people say, oh, if there's a recession in the world, or like a recession happens. Now, it may have a big effect. Now, the reason why I personally don't buy into that, in fact, if you actually look during recessions, things like fast food, alcohol, cheap entertainment, those industries actually all hold up pretty decent. And there is a little bit of an unspoken link that Pokemon cards are a coping mechanism for a lot of people. So I don't know, for me, I just personally wouldn't assume that having a recession is a green light for a market crash. I'd actually be weary of that, to be honest. Now, in terms of an outlier or something that you actually have to consider, I'm talking in the 10-year stretch, is that if Nintendo has a console that is another failure like the Wii U. Now, Pokemon games release solely on Nintendo consoles, as a lot of you know, and Pokemon has always been very fortunate that their IP has been in the hands of Nintendo, and Nintendo consoles in general and handhelds have had very strong sales, though Pokemon is actually the biggest it's ever been right now. And a big thanks to that is because of the Nintendo Switch with Pokemon Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet. Now, both of these games have some of the strongest sales in all of Pokemon's history, and of course, it's just cause and effect. That has definitely spilled over into the TCG, and the big reason why the TCG is so popular right now is, yes, there's a lot of things from the outside world that have caused it, but of course, Pokemon has just become so big, and of course, the Nintendo Switch and that area is definitely a massive reason why this has happened. Though I just did want to say, if you do feel like a big connection to my content and you do like my style and the way I create videos, I do really appreciate a lot of you watching, being a creative soul and always figuring out different things. It's great to see a positive reception on this channel, but I did want to let you know I am also creating content on my channel called Philip's Trick Room. Here I focus very heavily on Pokemon video games and Nintendo video game essays. In a recent video, I asked the question of, is Pokemon Legends EA really that bad, or is it just a bit overhated? Definitely, if you do like my style of content, feel free to check out Philip's Trick Room. Though an area that we need to talk about is, what if a Nintendo console were to fail like the Wii U did back in 2012? Well, that would mean a lot of people wouldn't experience a mainline Pokemon game like they did with the Switch, and it would cause a ripple effect. Now, Pokemon was actually very fortunate that during the Wii U's failure, they did have the 3DS to hold on to, and they also had Pokemon Go at that time. But honestly, if the 3DS didn't exist and it was just the Wii U, that could have been actually a big change for Pokemon, and they could have taken a bit of a fall during that period. And of course, if the mainline games didn't sell to expectations, that would also be a direct cause and effect for the TCG. Now, right now, that isn't anything to worry about because the Switch 2 seems quite strong, but you do have to ask yourself, what about the next generation? Because Nintendo doesn't have split markets like with handheld and consoles like they did during the 90s and the 2000s. I mean, when the GameCube underperformed, they had the Game Boy Advance that kind of saved them from that. And same thing as well with the Wii U, they had the 3DS. So right now, Nintendo and Pokemon do have a little bit of all of their eggs in one basket for their consoles. So 5 or 10 years down the line, that is something to consider because a lot of Pokemon's success for their games are determined and they're heavily linked with Nintendo. And a big driving force is the fact that Pokemon video games are a massive way that the TCG booms as well. And you got to think about that, like even with Dragon Ball's biggest motivator is the anime, okay? And what happened when they announced that the Super Anime would be returning? All Dragon Ball cards started spiking because that's their lifeline. That's what gives it fire. So that is also, when you think of the bloodline of Pokemon, what gives it life, that all is to do with their mainline video games. That creates a lot of everything. Like even with the TCG, right now everything is connected to Pokemon Legends EA. Pokemon Winds and Waves is looking right now that it's going to be a success. But something that could cause a market crash is if Generation 11 or Generation 12, there is that hidden link with Nintendo as well that you do need to consider, especially for the market of the TCG as well, because you do need people to still be very connected to Pokemon in the long term. Though one area that could actually cause a big flip is if the scarcity psychology of collectibles slowly fades away. One thing about Pokemon cards right now is that they're not actually that scarce, but people think they are. Like I said before, there's just so many people entering the hobby, and right now it feels like products are scarce because you cannot buy them. But Pokemon cards right now are being printed more than ever before. In fact, they're not actually that scarce, it's just that there's so much demand for Pokemon cards. But if that feeling of scarcity fades away, it could also cause a shakeup. FOMO and scarcity just have a way of doing things to people where they make people like things that they probably wouldn't like if it wasn't scarce. And that whole principle of how scarce collectibles are, how rare they are, that whole kind of mystical void about them, if that gets taken away, that could cause problems. And the thing with collectibles is they run on a very, very fine line. And what I mean by this fine line is that you have this illusion that they're rare, they're scarce, the whole lot, which they are. I mean, if you've ever opened Prismatic Evolutions or even Ascended Heroes, you know how hard it is to pull a chase card. Like there's no joke. That's why they get the prices that they do. But also then you have this other area that they're actually kind of abundant. When you look at pop reports, when you look at all that, there is a lot of product out there. Whether or not this scarcity mindset or the people just realize that, hey, they're probably a bit more abundant than we thought. That did happen in the 90s with a lot of sports cards. Could that happen again with Pokemon? Look, right now, a lot of this stuff is just all how it could happen or what could happen. The biggest thing right now, especially in the medium to short term, that could cause a market spike or a market crash is if multiple things happen together. And the biggest one I could see, and the most realistic outcome, or the path with the least path of resistance for a market crash, would be is if printing demand really picked up and you did have a few people fade out, or the people that are not that invested in Pokemon as a franchise. Kind of like with all those sneaker bros that were collecting sneakers and doing that, and now they're not interested in that anymore, because you do have a lot of people that aren't not genuine fans. But the only thing with Pokemon that's a little bit different to sneakers and everything is that Pokemon's had a lot of longevity. And even if it did leave, or the hype beasts of the hobby left, you would still have a massive audience, man. You'd still have it would be a giant, there's still so many people that collect Pokemon, regardless if it's a hype period, regardless if Pokemon cards are the next trending thing, regardless if sports card collectors are entering. Even if all of them left, you have such a strong foundation of collectors. So it's very hard for a market crash to happen right now as well, especially with, as you can see through my videos, and I'm going through all those analytics, there is so many new people entering. Pokemon cards right now are in the most demand they've ever been. So as much as I want to give positive info and say, hey, don't worry, prices will come down eventually, right now, I don't also want to just be saying that just to kind of be like, oh, Phil, thanks for just lying to me. You know, I'm not going to lie to you. I have to be a bit honest with the current situation of how it's really happening, and it is a bit of a tough situation at the moment. Though, whether or not we're at a top signal or at the top of the market right now, I think, honestly, it's just so early to make those calls, especially when you're seeing sets like Ascended Heroes. They're just selling for such high price premiums. And right now, I think it's a smart idea to just play it safe with whatever you do. Be optimistic that there could be chance for future growth, but also understand that, hey, prices are getting pretty ridiculous at the same time. However, I think collecting with a budget in mind is important, and if you are interested in how to do that, I explain on how to collect on a budget within this video on screen here. In this video on screen, I cover all those points. It's a really good video if you are starting out in the hobby and you'd like to learn more about that topic. I really appreciate you watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.